Hello, my name is Garrett Stearns, and today I'm going to be talking a bit about storytelling and my favorite brand and company, Form Software Inc. So I decided to nerd out a little bit with this assignment and go with my actual favorite brand besides maybe Apple because I didn't think we could choose that for this assignment. So I went with Form Software, who is a small video game developer, relatively small. They've grown a little bit and gotten some mainstream success recently, but they're best known for their series Dark Souls, which has a bit of a cult following to it, and very dedicated and loyal fan base. The idea behind this series is that it's extremely difficult, but yet so fair that you could beat the game at level 1, and people have actually done that, but it's so hard that most people can't. And so you know that it's kind of a skill barrier there and not anything jankiness behind the actual game that's causing you not to be able to beat it because people have been able to beat it at level 1. And so it creates this sense of accomplishment when you finally are able to beat bosses. And after you put in all this time, you'll even get this kind of adrenaline rush. And it's this feeling that all Form Software players know that other video games just really haven't been able to replicate. And that feeling, I feel like, is really what sets this company apart from other video game developers in the industry. So I actually did choose this company because they are my favorite. I'm not lying. I even have a little nerdy poster here that hangs in a different room, so it's over to the side here. But after choosing them, I started thinking about what stories they tell, and they ended up fitting the mold pretty perfectly. The book talks about how the founder story is kind of your first important story. It's the one that sets you apart and differentiates you from your customers on or from your competitors on a different level than just the product, on an emotional level that customers can connect with. And Form Software has a really strong founder story, which I'm going to go into right now. The founder story of FormSoft starts with their founder, Hidetaka Miyazaki. When he was a kid, it said that he wasn't allowed to play video games. Poor him, right? So he never started playing until he eventually got into college, and by this time he was quite behind and self-proclaimed not very good at video games. But he really loved them and put tons of hours into them, and night after night, through all the time and effort that he put into them, he'd eventually beat some of these games. And again, even after all of this time that he put into it, he's still self-proclaimed pretty bad at video games. So it was just this sheer kind of will and determination that he would beat these games through. And through this, he would get this sense of accomplishment, this adrenaline rush that I talked about earlier, and all of these emotions that we now connect to Form Software games. And it were these feelings that he wanted to essentially develop games that would allow other people to feel that sense of accomplishment and feel that feeling. And that is how Form Software was born. Now that we have the story laid out, let's take a look at how good Form Software did at telling this story, looking at the key characteristics of a story from the book. So first we have the identifiable character, which is obviously the founder, Miyazaki. And I think they did a really good job making him identifiable, especially with my generation of millennials. We're a bit older and our parents may have been a little bit more strict about us playing video games as kids. So I think a lot of people could probably relate to him not being able to play video games as a kid. And then also just not being super good at video games. It really opens up the door to all players and not having to be good, but still being able to get that sense of accomplishment in beating a very hard game. So next we have the authentic emotion, which would be that feeling that Miyazaki feels when he finally beats the game. That feeling that I've been talking about that is the specialness behind the Form Software game. Players can already connect to that. They've already felt that feeling, and new players that haven't felt that feeling yet, they've heard of it, and that's kind of what they're seeking for. So that is what they can connect on. Then we have these specific details of Miyazaki being in college, which again I think is something that a lot of video games players can relate to, because even if you're not in college now, it's probably the time of your life that you can associate with the most video games that you play because it was the most free time that you had. Maybe prior to college you had a little bit more than that in high school, but college you're kind of with all your buddies. You don't have your parents trying to tell you not to play it, so it's again very relatable to that story. And then lastly we have the significant moment, which again is that moment when Miyazaki beats the boss. It is the time of the new, where he now knows about these feelings, these authentic emotions that we've already connected to. Before this significant moment, he didn't know about these emotions and these feelings that you could get from a video game. And now there's the new norm where he knows that you can get these feelings from video games, and he wants to bring these feelings to his customers via form software, and that is the message that people really can cling to and connect to on a level outside of just what the product is. But of course, form software still has to deliver on the actual product, or else people aren't going to stick around. They may form that emotional connection through the founder story and be invested in what the company can do, but if they can't deliver, then nobody's going to stick around. And let me tell you, take it from me, form software absolutely delivers on the value. And with that, with what I just said, coming from a customer is probably what their most used story is, the customer story. Except for form software doesn't do anything to actually tell these stories. They just allow kind of word of mouth and their customers to hype their games up and talk about this feeling that they get from beating the games and self-market in that way. So it's my recommendation here for form software to take my own customer story and turn it into a value story that they can kind of dramatize a bit and change however they want to get it across in a commercial to sell not just one game but their entire catalog of games, with the idea of selling this experience of beating the game and getting that adrenaline rush and that feeling, and that'll be what this story is about. The commercial will feature a man in his late 20s to early 30s starting a new job. It'll show his new routine setting in montage style, where he's stuck between work and home, going back and forth between work and home, looking for entertainment while he's at home, scrolling the video game stores, looking for something to do to no avail, until he finally finds that form software title. And this will be a big moment for him. Then it'll start showing them in the montage, him playing this title night after night, and he's slowly getting closer and closer to beating it until finally he beats that boss, and it'll cinematically convey the emotions and the adrenaline rush that he feels. And now it'll continue with that montage back and forth from work, except for now he's beating the bosses when he's at home, and this is lifting his mood, it's improving his life, the monotony of his life is starting to disappear, and thus is the new normal of entertainment and not being so stuck between home and work and monotony. This was based on a personal story where I was assigned to a new client in middle of nowhere, Michigan, in the dead of the winter where nobody does anything social. It's a bit dramatized, but I think it's very relatable. You have the identifiable character who is stuck between home and work, which I think is very identifiable, especially post-pandemic where everybody's going back to work. I think monotony is something that people struggle with a lot in life and can find themselves falling into routine back and forth from work. Then we have the authentic emotion, which is the same feeling that I've been talking about this whole time, and it's when he finally beats that boss, and it's the feelings that he would get. These will be conveyed cinematically, maybe changing the color tones, the music, however they want to do it in a commercial. I'm not a producer, but I think you know what I mean. Then we got specific details, which I didn't really cover as I was telling the story, but video game players are pretty stereotypical, and it wouldn't be too hard to just sprinkle in some specific details into this character's room that people can relate to. Lastly, we have the significant moment, and you might think that the significant moment is when he finds the form software title, and that is a pretty big moment, but it's really when he finally first beats that first boss, because that's what sets in the new norm of these new feelings and accomplishment that you're getting from this video game, and that's what breaks the monotony of his old life and sits in that new norm of having entertainment in your life and not being so bored. Like Form Software and many other companies, I believe that we will need to utilize our founder story in our project. As per the book, this is that first story that your company tells. It's the one that sets you apart from the competition on something other than what your product is. And that's where we're at in this project. We're pitching for the very first time for investment, and that's what we need. We need something that can differentiate us from the competition in a way that competition isn't already using, because people differentiate themselves in the same ways. It's all about the value, and most of the time that value is going to be very similar, and so you need something that can set you apart, that people can connect to on an emotional level and not just that value. And I think we have the perfect founder story built in too, since this is a college project and we actually had to pivot our product, so we don't even know exactly what we're doing right now. So we got this story of college students starting a project, having to pivot, some turmoil there, and I don't know exactly where we're going to go, but I think it's going to make a great founder story that we can utilize in this pitch. And with that, that concludes this assignment. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Just kidding, I don't really use YouTube, but thanks for watching.